Hey guys, tonight we glide into a world where water shimmers like molten glass, and the air smells faintly of salt and sweet tropical blooms. You probably won't survive this unscathed, well, emotionally, because once you see how calm life can feel in a Polynesian lagoon, your modern stress might seem downright absurd. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge barefoot along the wet sand at dawn, your toes sinking into the cool, damp grains while a thin mist hugs the surface of the lagoon. The sun is just a pale wash of peach orange over distant cliffs, and each ripple in the water catches a fraction of light, shimmering like liquid gold. Canoes float gently, tethered with frayed ropes or left to drift slowly, their carved prows pointing toward the horizon as if daring the day to begin. Fishermen hum low, melodic chants, swinging their nets with the rhythm of a heartbeat that seems older than the islands themselves. Historians still argue whether these chants were merely work songs or held spiritual significance. But for now, they feel like a secret lullaby shared between man, water, and sky. You watch as one fisherman tips a canoe into the water lapping against polished wood. A faint smell of salt and algae rises as your hand grazes the hull, smooth from years of paddling and varnished with coconut oil. You notice tiny crabs skittering near the shore, carrying sand castles on their backs, completely oblivious to human spectacle. Meanwhile, a fringe ritual unfolds nearby. Some elders sprinkle a pinch of ground coral into the water, whispering protective words, an act that outsiders often dismiss as superstition, but it carries weight here, tangible in the nods and smiles exchanged. Your eyes drift to the horizon where distant islands poke through the mist. The first rays of sun glint off palm fronds, and you inhale the scent of wet wood, ocean, and morning dew. A canoe rocks gently in a lagoon, birds swooping low, and for a moment, the world feels suspended. Even the occasional clumsy seagull landing nearby adds to this tableau, awkward but comforting, reminding you that not all perfection is rigid. As the fishermen pull in their first catch, you notice a small detail. A particular bird swoops toward the boats every morning, seemingly predicting which nets will be fruitful. Scientists debate whether it's mere coincidence, instinct, or a complex learned behavior, but you smile at the notion that even the wildlife might be in on the morning routine. You kneel near the water's edge, letting the cold lap at your ankles, and imagine stories whispered into the lagoon, told countless mornings by countless voices. A soft breeze carries the fragrance of blooming hibiscus and salt, stirring the mist around your shoulders. You spot a log canoe being pushed off the sand, its hull gliding over the water, so silently it seems almost magical. Villagers hum along with the paddle's rhythm, each stroke a gentle percussion in the orchestra of the waking day. And as you follow the movement of the canoes with your gaze, you catch a glimpse of a small, quirky detail. Someone has tied a tiny carved tiki to the prow, its smile unervingly wide, as if to ward off bad luck or just for amusement. You can't help but chuckle softly, imagining the conversation that led to this tiny superstition being enacted on the water. By now, the sun has brightened enough to dissolve some of the mist, revealing the full sweep of the lagoon, the shimmering water, and the green crowns of distant palms. The rhythmic paddling continues, and you realize you're not just observing. You're absorbed, lulled into the island's pulse. Historians still argue whether Polynesian fishermen initially settled islands for trade, resource scarcity, or sheer adventure. But right now, the reason feels irrelevant. You let your senses absorb the textures, the smells, the gentle sounds, the soft rocking, and the faint laughter floating from nearby huts. Time slows. The waves are gentle, and the occasional splash of a fish jumping keeps the scene from being too quiet. You take a deep breath, tasting the salt, hearing the hum of the lagoon, and feeling the first true tug of relaxation in your shoulders. Even a careless pelican landing nearby seems orchestrated, a comic punctuation in this symphony of calm. You stretch, toes curling into the sand, watching the day awaken slowly, savoring each moment. And then, almost imperceptibly, you notice the subtle heartbeat of life along the lagoon. A canoe drifts close to a patch of mangrove, a fisherman murmuring to himself while arranging nets. Historians still argue whether solitary murmurs like this are meditative, ritual, or purely functional. But you feel it's all three at once. You lean closer to the water, seeing small fish dart around submerged roots, and wonder how many mornings this same pattern has repeated over centuries. The lagoon now fully reflects the morning sky, clouds faintly pink, water gently rippling. You let your eyes wander across the scene. Canoes, palms, fishermen, birds, and the gentle mist lifting like a curtain. Everything feels deliberate yet unhurried, an orchestra tuned by generations. You take a final deep breath, letting the lagoon's rhythm seep into your chest, and acknowledge that you've only just begun this slow drift into the day and into the heart of the Polynesian village. The sun rises higher, casting warm golden streaks across the palm-fringed paths that wind between the thatched huts. You trudge along, feeling the grains of sand shift under your bare feet, soft and uneven, sometimes warm from the early rays, sometimes cool where the morning mist lingers. The village stretches before you like a patchwork quilt of earth tones and green canopies, each hut slightly different, each path carrying the faint smell of smoke for breakfast fires. Occasionally, a child scurries past, barefoot and giggling, leaving tiny footprints that will vanish in the next tide. Historians still argue whether Polynesian settlements developed these winding paths for spiritual reasons or simply because straight paths made little sense in the soft, shifting terrain. But to you, the paths feel perfectly natural, inviting exploration. You notice women carrying woven baskets balanced expertly on their hips, the contents a mosaic of fresh fruits, taro, and coconuts. They greet one another with nods, small waves, and teasing remarks about who overslept or spilled a little water. One woman, laughing, tips a basket slightly, spilling a few bright oranges onto the sand. A fringe practice that occasionally appears in villages is fruit blessings, where a piece of each day's harvest is offered silently to the sea, perhaps to appease spirits or maybe just to keep tradition alive. Opinions differ. You bend to pick up an orange, feeling its textured skin against your palm and tasting the faint saltiness carried by the breeze. Along the path, men haul bundles of freshly cut pandanus leaves for weaving mats, their hands scarred and skilled, moving with the practiced grace of someone who has done this for decades. You pass a hut where a man hums while tying intricate knots, and you can't help but notice the tiny carvings along his mat, abstract symbols that might represent ancestors, stars, or merely decoration. Scholars still debate whether such carvings hold coded messages or are purely ornamental, but either way, they add a layer of charm that invites quiet reflection. You pause near a cluster of coconut palms, their fronds swaying lazily overhead. The rustling leaves create a natural percussion, complemented by distant bird calls and the gentle chatter of villagers. Somewhere nearby, a child practices a balancing trick with a long bamboo pole, wobbling comically but laughing all the same, reminding you that even in a place built around work, play finds its way in. The mixture of labor, leisure, and laughter forms a rhythm, almost musical, as if the village itself breathes in gentle waves. Further along, you spot a man using a thin, pointed stick to poke at the sand, drawing what appear to be symbols or perhaps maps. Locals sometimes use these sketches to plan fishing routes or mark ceremonial grounds, and some historians still argue whether these sand drawings were primarily functional or ritualistic. You crouch down to study one. It looks like an abstract starburst, radiating outward with careful symmetry, yet there's a whimsical touch, like the artist paused mid-thought to add a little flourish. The aroma of cooking drifts through the village, mingling with the smell of damp earth and coconut husks. Women stir steaming pots over small fires, the smoke curling lazily into the sky. You notice a playful debate unfolding near a pot of boiling taro. Someone insists that adding a pinch of salt makes the flavor sing, while another claims that a whisper of coconut milk is the only true way. You chuckle softly, The argument reminds you of modern kitchen squabbles, yet here it carries centuries of tradition. A small bridge over a shallow stream catches your attention. Water trickles gently beneath, reflecting sunlight in tiny, fractured diamonds. Children skip across, sometimes misjudging their steps, and the sound of their laughter mingles with the gentle gurgle of the stream. A fringe belief in some islands holds that stepping lightly over water brings good luck, particularly if you hum a tune while crossing. You test it, stepping softly, humming a note, and wonder if luck will really follow, or if it's just a charming distraction. As you continue along the palm-fringed paths, the village unfolds in layers, the woven mats drying in the sun, fish laid out near huts, elders sitting in quiet conversation, and teenagers practicing a call-and-response chant that seems to echo across the lagoon. Historians still argue whether this chant was originally a way to teach navigation, convey history orally, or merely entertain, but creates a soothing cadence as you walk. You notice one of the chants is slightly offbeat, a subtle improvisation, and you can't help but smile at the creativity threading through routine. You reach a small clearing where the path curves around a large banyan tree. The roots twist and spiral, creating natural alcoves where villagers sometimes pause to rest or hold small discussions. One elderly woman is seated cross-legged, carefully threading fibers through a partially completed mat. She hums softly, and you realize the song is one you heard faintly at the lagoon this morning. It seems these melodies travel, uniting distant points in the village with invisible threads. Alongside the banyan tree, a man is balancing on a narrow plank, practicing agility and focus, a demonstration of skills needed for canoe navigation or simply for maintaining balance on the uneven terrain of the islands. A fringe practice, some observers note, is the plank challenge, believed to improve not only balance but mental resilience. Historians still debate whether such exercises had practical or purely ceremonial origins, but watching him, you feel the calm efficiency of centuries-old routines in motion. The path leads you past small plots of taro and yam, their leaves glistening with morning dew. Women tend to the plants, singing quietly to encourage growth, a practice some dismiss as superstition, yet plants seem to flourish regardless. You kneel, feeling the earth's cool dampness, and notice tiny snails gliding across leaves, unhurried and patient, a gentle reminder that the pace of life here is measured, deliberate, and accommodating to both work and wonder. Eventually, the path rises slightly, offering a view over the lagoon and the village below. The sight takes your breath away, the thatched roofs clustered together, canoes bobbing lazily, smoke curling upward in thin spirals, and the distant ocean sparkling under the rising sun. You pause, letting your eyes trace the gentle contours, inhaling the mingling scents of sea, earth, and cooking fires. A faint chuckle escapes you, noticing a dog dozing lazily in a patch of sun, the epitome of island tranquility. With each step, you feel more entwined with the village's rhythm, the soft percussion of tasks, the whisper of leaves, the chatter of people, and the occasional squeal of a child. The palm-fringed paths aren't merely ways to navigate. They're living arteries, carrying history, community, and a gentle cadence of daily life. You realize that following them isn't just movement. It's immersion, a soft passage into a world where time seems both measured and expansive, a perfect lull between dawn and the bustle of the day's work. You follow the gentle curve of the path until it opens onto a wider space where massive logs lie in waiting, the raw material for the village's prized canoes. The air smells faintly of sap and freshly cut wood, mingling with the briny scent of the lagoon nearby. Villagers are gathered here, men and a few elder women, working in concert, carving, scraping, and sanding. You watch the transformation of these once rough trunks into sleek vessels designed to glide effortlessly across the water. There's a rhythm here, almost hypnotic, the rasping sound of adzes, the soft chant of song, the occasional laughter when a blade slips just a little. Historians still argue whether Polynesian canoe designs evolved purely from practical needs or incorporated spiritual and symbolic elements. But from where you stand, every curve and carving seems purposeful, as if shaped by centuries of observation, trial, and reverence. A fringe detail catches your eye. Small carved figures tucked into the bow and stern of each canoe, sometimes grotesque, sometimes whimsical. Some villagers claim these are protective spirits, ensuring calm seas and safe passage, while outsiders occasionally dismiss them as simple superstition. You notice one tiny figure grinning exaggeratedly, its tiny teeth gleaming in the morning sun. Somehow, it feels like a companion for the journey, a tiny passenger riding silently along. You chuckle softly, imagining conversations the canoe might have had with its carved crew. You kneel beside an artisan shaping a canoe with rhythmic, patient strokes. The wood shavings curl around your feet, delicate as ribbons, releasing a faint sweet aroma. His hands move with effortless confidence, the motion precise, almost meditative. You realize that each scratch, each groove, is intentional, a combination of function and aesthetics. A historian might note that the techniques have barely changed in centuries, though some debate whether innovation occurred in secret or was shared openly across islands. You run a finger along the nearly finished hull, smooth, warm, and subtly polished by coconut oil. It almost hums under your touch. Nearby, children peek from behind palm trunks, watching the process with wide-eyed fascination. They imitate the motion silently, using small sticks to mimic the scraping of adzes. Their seriousness is comical. One even hunches over a tiny log as though it holds the weight of the entire lagoon. A quirky tidbit. Some villages have contests to see which child can carve the smallest but most convincing miniature canoe, and the competition often leads to hilarious debates about whether accuracy or creativity should win. You smile, feeling the gentle hum of tradition bridging generations. The lagoon shimmers in the distance, sunlight bouncing across water like shards of crystal, reminding you why these canoes are so crucial. Paddles, once shaped and oiled, will slice through the waves as extensions of human movement, as vital to survival as food or shelter. Some historians argue about the influence of ocean currents on canoe design, whether certain hull shapes were developed purely from observation or guided by instinctive experimentation. Either way, the results are elegant, efficient, and perfectly suited to the ebb and flow of island life. You notice the chant from earlier are still weaving through the air, a steady hum over the rasping of blades. The song seems to guide the workers' hands, synchronizing motions, and lending a spiritual undertone to the labor. Fringe beliefs suggest that the canoe absorbs the song itself, carrying its rhythm and blessing into the waters once launched. You smile, imagining a canoe singing silently as it glides across the lagoon at dawn. A young apprentice approaches, holding a small scraper awkwardly. The master guides his hands, correcting angles gently, while teasing him about having the arms of a coconut tree, which earns a muffled laugh from nearby observers. It's a delicate balance of mentorship and amusement, an ancient system of apprenticeship that feels timeless in its simplicity. You watch as the young boy gains confidence, his strokes gradually echoing the rhythm of the master, the bond palpable. The scent of wet wood and coconut oil fills your nose as the sun climbs higher, warming your shoulders. You notice tiny imperfections in the wood, which are carefully smoothed or left intentionally to give the canoe character. Fringe tales claim that leaving one small knot in the wood honors the spirit of the tree, preserving a connection between human and nature. Historians still debate whether such practices were widespread or localized eccentricities, but the effect is undeniable. It adds personality, making each canoe unique. As you walk around the largest hull, you see the artisans discussing the placement of outriggers, a crucial element that prevents tipping in choppy waters. Their gestures are precise, almost ceremonial, as they measure angles with string and small wooden markers. You realize that these tiny adjustments, debated and perfected over generations, are life-saving innovations disguised as simple craftsmanship. You can't help but admire the ingenuity woven seamlessly into beauty and practicality. A sudden bird call pierces the air, startling a small dog that scuttles across the workshop area. The moment is comic, yet oddly grounding, a reminder that life continues around work, unhurried, blending laughter and purpose. One fringe belief holds that the noise of startled animals wards off malevolent spirits during construction, though no one seems too concerned about the logic. You smile, noting how humor and ritual coexist naturally here. As the morning wanes, you notice a small canoe being carried toward the water, its polished hull reflecting the sunlight like liquid amber. The master pats it gently, whispering what might be a blessing or a farewell, and launches it with a careful shove. It glides into the lagoon with barely a ripple, as if acknowledging the countless hands that shaped it. You feel a quiet awe, imagining the adventures it will carry, the currents it will dance with, the sunrises it will witness. The artisans pause, wiping sweat from their brows, laughter rising as someone teases the apprentice for leaving an extra shaving in the hull. You chuckle softly, imagining the same scene repeated for centuries, unchanged yet ever new, a continuous heartbeat in the village's life. Historians still argue whether these communal moments of levity were deliberate morale boosters or spontaneous, but you sense a balance of both. Finally, you step back, surveying the scene. Logs transformed into sleek canoes, the shimmer of lagoon waters in the distance, the laughter and chatter mingling with chants and the soft slicing of blades. A gentle rhythm has taken hold of your breathing. Your shoulders loosen, your mind slows. You realize that the ritual of canoe carving is not just labor. It's storytelling, community, patience, and joy, wrapped together with sweat, song, and the scent of wood. You follow the gentle curve of the path until it opens onto a wider space where massive logs lie in waiting, the raw material for the village's prized canoes. The air smells faintly of sap and freshly cut wood, mingling with the briny scent of the lagoon nearby. Villagers are gathered here, men and a few elder women, working in concert, carving, scraping, and sanding. You watch the transformation of these once rough trunks into sleek vessels designed to glide effortlessly across the water. There's a rhythm here, almost hypnotic, the rasping sound of adzes, the soft chant of song, the occasional laughter when a blade slips just a little. Historians still argue whether Polynesian canoe designs evolved purely from practical needs or incorporated spiritual and symbolic elements. But from where you stand, every curve and carving seems purposeful, as if shaped by centuries of observation, trial, and reverence. A fringe detail catches your eye. Small carved figures tucked into the bow and stern of each canoe, sometimes grotesque, sometimes whimsical. Some villagers claim these are protective spirits, ensuring calm seas and safe passage, while outsiders occasionally dismiss them as simple superstition. You notice one tiny figure grinning exaggeratedly, its tiny teeth gleaming in the morning sun. Somehow, it feels like a companion for the journey, a tiny passenger riding silently along. You chuckle softly, imagining conversations the canoe might have had with its carved crew. You kneel beside an artisan shaping a canoe with rhythmic, patient strokes. The wood shavings curl around your feet, delicate as ribbons, releasing a faint sweet aroma. His hands move with effortless confidence, the motion precise, almost meditative. You realize that each scratch, each groove, is intentional, a combination of function and aesthetics. A historian might note that the techniques have barely changed in centuries, though some debate whether innovation occurred in secret or was shared openly across islands. You run a finger along the nearly finished hull, smooth, warm, and subtly polished by coconut oil. It almost hums under your touch. Nearby, children peek from behind palm trunks, watching the process with wide-eyed fascination. They imitate the motion silently, using small sticks to mimic the scraping of adzes. Their seriousness is comical. One even hunches over a tiny log as though it holds the weight of the entire lagoon. A quirky tidbit. Some villages have contests to see which child can carve the smallest but most convincing miniature canoe, and the competition often leads to hilarious debates about whether accuracy or creativity should win. You smile, feeling the gentle hum of tradition bridging generations. The lagoon shimmers in the distance, sunlight bouncing across water like shards of crystal, reminding you why these canoes are so crucial. Paddles, once shaped and oiled, will slice through the waves as extensions of human movement, as vital to survival as food or shelter. Some historians argue about the influence of ocean currents on canoe design, whether certain hull shapes were developed purely from observation or guided by instinctive experimentation. Either way, the results are elegant, efficient, and perfectly suited to the ebb and flow of island life. You notice the chant from earlier are still weaving through the air, a steady hum over the rasping of blades. The song seems to guide the workers' hands, synchronizing motions, and lending a spiritual undertone to the labor. Fringe beliefs suggest that the canoe absorbs the song itself, carrying its rhythm and blessing into the waters once launched. You smile, imagining a canoe singing silently as it glides across the lagoon at dawn. A young apprentice approaches, holding a small scraper awkwardly. The master guides his hands, correcting angles gently, while teasing him about having the arms of a coconut tree, which earns a muffled laugh from nearby observers. It's a delicate balance of mentorship and amusement, an ancient system of apprenticeship that feels timeless in its simplicity. You watch as the young boy gains confidence, his strokes gradually echoing the rhythm of the master, the bond palpable. The scent of wet wood and coconut oil fills your nose as the sun climbs higher, warming your shoulders. You notice tiny imperfections in the wood, which are carefully smoothed or left intentionally to give the canoe character. Fringe tales claim that leaving one small knot in the wood honors the spirit of the tree, preserving a connection between human and nature. Historians still debate whether such practices were widespread or localized eccentricities, but the effect is undeniable. It adds personality, making each canoe unique. As you walk around the largest hull, you see the artisans discussing the placement of outriggers, a crucial element that prevents tipping in choppy waters. Their gestures are precise, almost ceremonial, as they measure angles with string and small wooden markers. You realize that these tiny adjustments, debated and perfected over generations, are life-saving innovations disguised as simple craftsmanship. You can't help but admire the ingenuity woven seamlessly into beauty and practicality. A sudden bird call pierces the air, startling a small dog that scuttles across the workshop area. The moment is comic, yet oddly grounding, a reminder that life continues around work, unhurried, blending laughter and purpose. One fringe belief holds that the noise of startled animals wards off malevolent spirits during construction, though no one seems too concerned about the logic. You smile, noting how humor and ritual coexist naturally here. As the morning wanes, you notice a small canoe being carried toward the water, its polished hull reflecting the sunlight like liquid amber. The master pats it gently, whispering what might be a blessing or a farewell, and launches it with a careful shove. It glides into the lagoon with barely a ripple, as if acknowledging the countless hands that shaped it. You feel a quiet awe, imagining the adventures it will carry, the currents it will dance with, the sunrises it will witness. The artisans pause, wiping sweat from their brows, laughter rising as someone teases the apprentice for leaving an extra shaving in the hull. You chuckle softly, imagining the same scene repeated for centuries, unchanged yet ever new, a continuous heartbeat in the village's life. Historians still argue whether these communal moments of levity were deliberate morale boosters or spontaneous, but you sense a balance of both. Finally, you step back, surveying the scene. Logs transformed into sleek canoes, the shimmer of lagoon waters in the distance, the laughter and chatter mingling with chants and the soft slicing of blades. A gentle rhythm has taken hold of your breathing. Your shoulders loosen, your mind slows. You realize that the ritual of canoe carving is not just labor. It's storytelling, community, patience, and joy, wrapped together with sweat, song, and the scent of wood. Finally, you take a step back onto the sandy edge, inhaling deeply the mingled scents of salt, wet wood, and morning flora. The tide's retreat reveals patterns in sand and shell, intricate and fleeting, like messages whispered from water to land. You let your gaze linger, absorbing the sensory mosaic, and feel yourself slowly settling into the gentle, timeless cadence of island life. The The scent of cooking fires drifts lazily across the village as the sun climbs higher, bringing warmth that slowly seeps into your shoulders and arms. You follow the tantalizing aromas to a cluster of huts where families are preparing breakfast, the smoke curling upward in delicate spirals that catch the morning light. Women stir pots of taro and fish, occasionally leaning to whisper teasingly to a child who fumbles with a steaming bowl. The atmosphere is intimate, unhurried, and almost musical in its rhythm. Chopping, stirring, laughter, and the occasional sizzling pop as something hits the hot surface of a pan. Historians still argue whether communal meals like these were primarily for sustenance, social cohesion, or ritual, but as you inhale the fragrant steam, the distinction seems delightfully irrelevant. A fringe detail catches your attention. A tiny pinch of crushed coral is sprinkled into one of the pots, said to enhance flavor and bring protection for the day ahead. Some villagers insist on this little act of culinary superstition, while outsiders often roll their eyes. But you can't help but admire the gentle ceremony of it. You watch the coral dissolve slowly, tiny grains sparkling in the liquid, adding texture and a quiet sense of ritual to the meal. You kneel near a low fire where a man flips taro cakes with deft movements. His hands move fluidly, confident, yet playful, occasionally turning the cake slightly too far or letting a bit of batter stick to the edge. A soft chuckle escapes you. The subtle human imperfection makes the scene feel warm and familiar. Children peek around him, pretending to be chefs themselves, mimicking his movements with oversized spoons and tiny laughter that rises and falls like waves. Scholars still debate whether culinary education in Polynesian villages was structured or entirely observational, but here, observation clearly reigns supreme. A woman carries a woven basket of fresh fruit across the sand, her bare feet stirring up fine clouds of dust that catch the sun like golden sparks. She pauses to offer a slice of papaya to a neighbor, who accepts with a grin and a playful roll of the eyes. Fringe beliefs sometimes claim that sharing the first bite of fruit with another person ensures prosperity for both, though no one seems particularly anxious about the outcome. You reach out for a mango, feeling the smooth, warm skin and releasing a faint, tropical fragrance that mingles with the salty air. Nearby, men are preparing small fish for grilling, scaling, and cleaning them with meticulous care. One young man hums a gentle tune as he works, an improvisation on a chant you've heard since morning. Historians still argue whether such tunes were practical, used to maintain rhythm, or spiritual, intended to honor the sea's generosity. You watch as the fish are laid neatly on skewers, their silvery bodies catching sunlight, almost too delicate to touch, and you feel a small thrill, imagining the flavors that will soon mingle with smoke and salt. A playful debate erupts as someone insists that adding coconut milk to the fish enhances flavor, while another claims that lime zest is the only true enhancement. You suppress a smile. The argument is gentle, imbued with warmth rather than conflict, and punctuated by soft laughter. Fringe accounts suggest that such culinary debates were also teaching moments for young villagers, subtly passing down knowledge while encouraging wit and observation. You watch a child nod seriously, pretending to weigh the merits of each option, and feel the warmth of tradition threaded into daily life. The morning sun glances off a nearby canoe moored at the shore, reflecting in the tiny puddles left behind by the receding tide. You notice that someone has carefully laid out small stones in a spiral pattern near the cooking area. Some historians argue these designs were purely aesthetic, while fringe observers suggest they could have been used to indicate ownership, measure portions, or even serve as playful maps for children. You crouch to examine the pattern, tracing the spiral with your finger, and can't help but feel it's both practical and magical. You pause by a low table where women are weaving mats while their youngest children play at their feet. The sound of bamboo against hands, interlaced with laughter and soft conversation, forms a lullaby of motion and sound. Occasionally, a woven strip slips, earning a quiet giggle and a gentle correction. Historians still debate the degree to which mat weaving was taught formally or passed down informally, but the scene makes the process feel effortless, natural, and meditative. You lean in, tracing a finger along the partially completed mat, feeling the subtle texture of fibers pressed together over hours, perhaps days of careful labor. In the background, a dog yawns and stretches near the fire, indifferent to the bustling breakfast preparations. Fringe lore in some islands suggests that animals resting near cooking areas absorb the energy of the food and carry blessings, though most villagers treat it more as a comforting superstition than a literal truth. You laugh quietly at the image of a dog as an unlikely culinary guardian, and enjoy the mingling of humor and ritual woven through the morning. The aroma of toasted taro and grilled fish begins to intensify, carried on the warm breeze. You notice a soft glint as a spoon or knife catches the sunlight, and you catch yourself smiling at the ordinary beauty of these small details. A child's laughter rises as someone flips a pancake a little too aggressively, sending a few pieces tumbling to the sand, a minor chaos that somehow feels emblematic of island life. Historians still argue whether such moments were celebrated for teaching resilience or merely laughed off, but either interpretation works perfectly here. You bend closer to inhale the fragrant steam from a pot of boiling fish, noticing subtle hints of herbs, salt, and coconut mingling. Fringe beliefs suggest that smelling cooking food before it's ready ensures good fortune, though you suspect the real magic is simply anticipation and mindfulness. The mixture of smells, sounds, and textures creates a sensory immersion that feels intimate, cozy, and timeless. Nearby, an elder woman quietly observes the preparations, nodding as she samples small bites, her presence a soft anchor to the morning's activity. Scholars still debate the extent to which elders guided food preparation formally or informally, but her subtle corrections and gentle smiles convey an unmistakable authority. You feel comforted watching her work, a living link between generations, effortlessly blending supervision and encouragement. As breakfast reaches its final stages, children carry small bowls to friends and neighbors, sharing morsels with laughter and exaggerated gestures. The act is playful, yet deliberate, forming connections and teaching generosity. Fringe accounts suggest that small acts of sharing during meals were considered essential to social harmony, and you can see how effortlessly it works here, as smiles and light teasing ripple across the gathering. Finally, you step back to absorb the scene in its entirety. The sun now fully illuminating the village, steam curling from cooking fires, laughter and conversation weaving a subtle melody, and the shimmer of lagoon water nearby, reflecting gold and green hues. The morning ritual is simple, rhythmic, and full of warmth, a dance of preparation, sustenance, and quiet joy. You inhale deeply, savoring the mingling scents, textures, and sounds, feeling a sense of calm settle fully around your shoulders and spine. You follow the faint path that winds under a canopy of coconut palms, their fronds swaying lazily in the gentle breeze, and soon arrive at a small clearing where children gather beneath the dappled sunlight. The warmth of the morning has mellowed into a comfortable heat, soft on your skin, and the air carries the mingling scents of taro, salt water, and damp earth. You crouch near the edge, watching as the children settle cross-legged on mats, their bare feet flicking tiny grains of sand absent-mindedly. Historians still argue whether Polynesian children were formally taught skills in structured settings or learned entirely through observation and participation, but this scene feels like a natural schoolroom, playful, immersive, and unhurried. A fringe detail catches your eye. A small boy draws symbols in the sand with a stick, occasionally glancing up to imitate a story being told by an elder. Some villagers claim these markings are a form of early navigation education, teaching patterns of stars or tides, while outsiders often dismiss them as idle doodles. You lean closer, tracing one curve with your finger, and can't help but appreciate the gentle, almost meditative repetition of learning through play. The elder begins the morning lesson with a soft chant, his voice low and melodic, carrying over the children and into the surrounding palms. He tells a story of the ancestors navigating vast oceans using only stars, wind, and wave patterns, weaving in small pauses that allow the children to respond, repeat, or gesture. Fringe accounts note that some of these chants encode mnemonic devices, helping students memorize navigation routes, fishing grounds, or seasonal cycles. You listen carefully, absorbing both the narrative and its rhythm, imagining yourself floating on a canoe under the same stars, guided by whispers from centuries past. Children practice weaving small mats, their hands clumsy, yet determined, following motions demonstrated by the elder. Some strands slip, earning quiet giggles, while others succeed in creating tight, elegant weaves. You watch as the elder leans in, correcting a finger placement with a gentle touch, a subtle smile acknowledging the child's effort. Historians still debate the balance between observational learning and direct instruction, but here, mentorship blends seamlessly with autonomy, and you feel the soft hum of patient guidance. Nearby, a group of older children practices a balancing exercise using bamboo poles, walking across low beams or narrow sandy ridges. You notice their concentration, the way their arms extend instinctively, their toes gripping uneven surfaces. Fringe practices suggest that such exercises train not only physical agility for canoeing and daily life, but also mental focus and resilience. You observe one child wobble dramatically before regaining balance, the tiny stumble eliciting a ripple of laughter from peers, the moment charming and human. A few children gather shells along the edge of the clearing, counting and arranging them in patterns while softly chanting numbers or directions. Some historians argue that these small acts functioned as rudimentary arithmetic or mapping exercises, a gentle introduction to skills crucial for navigation and trade. Others suggest the patterns were purely creative, teaching spatial reasoning in an enjoyable manner. You crouch to examine one spiral of shells, noting its symmetry and playful irregularities, the combination of logic and imagination, both soothing and delightful. The elder introduces storytelling with props, a piece of driftwood, a shell, or a feather, each symbol representing a part of a tale about voyaging, sea creatures, or moral lessons. Children take turns holding the objects, adding gestures, or mimicking actions, creating a dynamic, multi-sensory learning environment. Fringe observations note that this method strengthened memory retention, yet it also served to enhance creativity and communal participation. You watch, mesmerized by the energy and focus coexisting in such a relaxed setting. Soft laughter punctuates the lesson as children invent minor variations on the story, teasing one another gently, or exaggerating gestures for comedic effect. Historians still debate the degree to which improvisation was encouraged, but you feel the freedom and encouragement radiating from the elder, blending tradition with spontaneity. One small boy pretends his stick is a paddle, mimicking the movements of fishermen you watched earlier, and you can't help but smile at the continuity of practice across generations. The sun climbs higher, casting dappled shadows that shift across the mats and sand. You notice how each child has a distinct style, some meticulous, some playful, some wildly imaginative. Fringe notes suggest that these differences were often subtly guided to balance, social cohesion, and individual expression. You lean back on your hands, feeling the warmth of the day, and listen to the combined murmur of conversation, chant, and laughter, the soundtrack of a village's gentle rhythm. Nearby, a group of girls practices knotting techniques with thin strands of fiber, preparing decorations or small baskets. Their fingers work nimbly, almost instinctively, while occasional mistakes are met with soft guidance rather than reprimand. Historians still argue whether such skills were learned through deliberate curriculum or spontaneous imitation, but observing them feels like witnessing centuries of wisdom condensed into fluid, intuitive motion. You trace one girl's pattern with your eyes, noting the small loops, twists, and deliberate pulls, a quiet meditation of craft and learning. You rise slowly, letting your gaze drift to the horizon where the lagoon glimmers through gaps in the palms. The children's voices carry lightly, harmonizing with the gentle rustle of leaves, and you inhale the mingling scents of earth, salt, and warm skin. Fringe beliefs sometimes suggest that learning outdoors, close to nature, strengthens a child's connection to the environment and heightens intuition, a practice that feels perfectly aligned with what you're observing. The elder concludes the morning session with a soft hum, allowing children a moment of reflection. They lie back on mats or lean against palm trunks, their breathing slowly synchronizing with the ambient sounds of the village. Historians still debate the role of quiet meditation in daily Polynesian education, but this pause feels integral, a moment to internalize lessons, bond socially, and align with the natural rhythm of the island. You notice a child picking up a shell from the earlier activity, turning it over in hand, seemingly lost in thought, a tiny echo of the lessons in observation, patience, and care. Finally, the children rise, stretching, yawning, and exchanging whispered conversations about what they've learned and discovered. Some scamper toward the lagoon to continue playful exploration, while others gather around elders for small corrections or demonstrations. You watch, feeling the soft continuity of education flowing effortlessly into play, work, and observation. The warmth of the sun, the gentle sway of palms, the rhythmic hum of voices, all combine to create a cocoon of calm learning, a space where curiosity and tradition coexist beautifully. You drift toward the small cluster of open-air stalls that make up the village market, the air now filled with a mingling sense of fresh fruits, fish, and fragrant flowers. The path beneath your feet is soft with sand and worn smooth by countless barefoot steps. Vendors sit cross-legged behind their wares, which are arranged with quiet artistry. Piles of bright papayas, glistening taro, woven mats, and occasionally tiny carved trinkets that catch the light. Historians still argue whether such markets primarily serve trade, social interaction, or ritualized display. But as you stroll through, the purpose feels pleasantly irrelevant compared to the gentle vibrancy of the scene. A fringe detail captures your attention. Small shells are sometimes embedded in the weaving of mats or strung as tiny charms on fruit baskets, believed to attract buyers or bring luck to transactions. You smile at the subtle interplay of commerce and superstition, imagining that even the most mundane exchanges are touched by centuries-old belief. A child toddles past, balancing a pile of oranges on her head, wobbling precariously but steadying herself with surprising grace, earning soft laughter from both vendor and neighbor alike. You pause at a stall where a man is carefully arranging bundles of dried fish, his hands nimble and precise. The fish glisten faintly in the sunlight, almost metallic, and you notice one particularly small bundle tied with a strip of pandanus. Fringe lore suggests that tying bundles in certain patterns ensures fish longevity or protects against spirits, though outsiders often dismiss the practice as whimsical. You reach out to touch the smooth surface, feeling its cool, slightly briny texture, and inhaling the subtle aroma of sun-dried seafood. Nearby, a woman is demonstrating the art of weaving small baskets from thin palm fibers. Her fingers move with confident speed, twisting, looping, and securing strands with effortless grace. Children cluster around, imitating her motions, occasionally dropping strands in mock frustration. Historians still debate whether such demonstrations were formal teaching moments or spontaneous exhibitions of skill, but either way, the scene is mesmerizing. You watch a basket take shape under her hands, noting the rhythm, precision, and fluidity that transforms raw materials into functional art. The soft hum of conversation rises and falls across the market. Buyers barter gently, negotiating over fruit, fish, or handmade mats. The exchanges are punctuated by laughter, teasing, and small displays of exaggeration. A particularly large papaya might be declared the king of the island, prompting chuckles from both parties. Fringe observations suggest that such playful exaggeration helps cement social bonds, ensuring that transactions remain friendly and communal rather than purely transactional. You grin, watching a child join in, holding up a papaya almost as large as herself, earning an amused nod from the vendor. Sunlight glints off colorful shells laid out as decoration, and you notice that some shells have small carvings, perhaps initials or tiny symbols. Some scholars argue these markings encode familial or navigational information, while others suggest they're purely decorative or personal. You pick up a tiny shell, feeling its smooth surface, imagining how such small objects connect individual identity to the broader community. A faint breeze carries the scent of roasted taro from a nearby fire, mingling with the sharp tang of fresh citrus. You spot a man offering samples to passersby, encouraging them to taste, laugh, and comment. Fringe lore sometimes claims that sharing small morsels during market hours ensures prosperity and goodwill, an idea that seems perfectly in tune with the laughter and light chatter filling the air. You take a small bite, savoring the nutty, slightly sweet flavor, letting the warmth of the moment settle into your senses. Children weave in and out of the stalls, carrying tiny trinkets or experimenting with barter themselves. You notice a particularly clever arrangement, a row of shells lined up like coins, with a small stick marking each purchase. Historians still argue whether children were formally instructed in market practices or learned through observation, but the ingenuity and playfulness are unmistakable. You kneel slightly to observe, marveling at the combination of instruction and imagination unfolding naturally. The market's hum is occasionally punctuated by distant calls, a fisherman shouting that a canoe has returned with a morning catch, or a woman alerting others to a particularly sweet batch of fruit. These auditory cues blend seamlessly with the swish of palm fronds, the laughter of children, and the soft scuff of bare feet on sand. Fringe interpretations claim that the rhythm of market sounds mirrors natural cycles, subtly syncing community activity with tides, sun, and wind. You tilt your head, listening carefully, and feel an unexpected sense of synchronization yourself, as if the market's cadence is slowly aligning your own heartbeat. You pause at a stall offering woven mats, noticing intricate patterns that seem both functional and artistic. Fringe accounts suggest some designs indicate family lineage or skill level, though historians debate the extent of encoded information. You trace a finger along a repeating motif, feeling the subtle texture changes where fibers overlap, and sense the patient labor embedded in every loop and knot. Nearby, a vendor demonstrates the proper way to roll a mat for transport, his hands precise yet fluid. A child attempts to imitate him, fumbling and giggling, and the elder smiles knowingly, offering a gentle correction. Historians still argue whether such daily tasks were formally taught or passed down by observation, but witnessing this tiny mentorship feels like a quiet thread linking past and present. A small bird flits from stall to stall, occasionally pecking at stray crumbs. Fringe tales sometimes consider these birds as lucky omens or messengers of fortune, though villagers mostly treat them with amused indulgence. You watch its flight, noting the effortless grace and the way it punctuates the market's rhythm with unpredictable charm. The sunlight intensifies, warming your shoulders and bringing a shimmer to the lagoon visible beyond the stalls. The market continues its gentle dance of negotiation, laughter, and careful craftsmanship. You inhale deeply, the mingling scents of earth, salt, fruit, and smoke blending into a sensory cocoon. The rhythm of life here, community, trade, play, and observation, flows effortlessly, grounding you in the simple yet intricate choreography of a Polynesian morning. Afternoon light slants gently across the lagoon, the sun now warming your shoulders more insistently, but softly enough to make the air feel languid and golden. You follow the familiar palm-lined paths toward the water, where a cluster of villagers gathers near the canoes, preparing for the day's afternoon outing. Men lift hulls carefully into the shallows while children peer from the edges, imitating paddling motions with miniature sticks. Historians still debate whether such communal journeys serve primarily for sustenance, teaching, or ritual, but you simply absorb the fluid choreography, feeling the pulse of a village attuned to water and wind. The canoes glide smoothly across the lagoon, their polished hulls catching sunlight in shifting ribbons. A fringe belief suggests that paddling in time with gentle chants strengthens the canoe's connection to the sea and protects travelers, though no one seems anxious about magic versus tradition. It simply feels right. You step aboard a small craft, the wood warm under your hands, and settle into a rhythm with the gentle rocking motion. Each paddle stroke sends small ripples across the water, tiny mirrors reflecting the sun, clouds, and the occasional startled fish darting beneath the surface. Children sit cross-legged along the canoes, mimicking adult paddling, laughing when their strokes send water splashing or when someone overbalances slightly. An elder at the stern keeps a soft, steady chant, a lullaby-like cadence that seems to pulse with the waves themselves. Fringe tales whisper that the cadence may encode navigation secrets, star positions, or seasonal guidance, though you suspect the song is primarily to soothe both paddlers and water alike. You inhale deeply, tasting the mixture of salt, sun, and warm wood, feeling the gentle surrender of time as the canoe drifts lazily. On the shore, women and elders prepare small offerings of fruit and flowers to leave at the water's edge, an age-old ritual to honor both ancestors and the ocean. Historians still argue whether such offerings were primarily symbolic, practical, or social, but as you watch, it seems like a seamless expression of gratitude. You imagine the tiny ceremonies repeated countless times over centuries, each one reinforcing the delicate balance between community, labor, and respect for nature. The sun tilts toward the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of coral, amber, and soft violet. Villagers begin returning, canoes gliding slowly, paddles dipping in unison, the gentle lap of water providing a soothing undertone. Children chatter softly, recounting imagined sea adventures or pointing out the birds, the small crabs, and the ever-present shimmer of sunlight on the lagoon. Fringe observations note that these post-journey stories are sometimes subtly coded lessons in navigation, observation, or communal memory. You listen, quietly smiling, feeling the rhythm of tradition and play intertwine seamlessly. Back on the sand, fires are rekindled, small pots begin to simmer, and the aroma of roasted taro drifts through the gentle evening breeze. Villagers gather casually, stretching out mats or sitting on driftwood, recounting the day with laughter, teasing, and affectionate commentary. You notice the gentle repetition of gestures. A child passes a bowl to a neighbor, an elder hums quietly, hands tracing patterns on a woven mat, and the tide laps softly at the shore. Historians still argue whether such evening assemblies were for practical coordination or social cohesion, but here they feel like both, a slow, deliberate wind down that naturally draws everyone together. As the sky deepens into twilight, stars begin to twinkle faintly, mirrored in the calm lagoon waters. You lie back on a mat, inhaling the warm, briny air, the faint smoke of cooking fires, and the subtle floral undertones drifting from nearby gardens. Fringe traditions sometimes suggest that such evenings help synchronize human rhythms with the cosmos, aligning sleep, reflection, and communal harmony. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the gentle sway of the hammock-like canoes earlier, the soft hum of conversation, the distant lullaby of waves, every sense immersed in the serene pulse of island life. The last light fades slowly, leaving the lagoon a glassy mirror of sky and distant palms. Soft laughter, gentle conversation, and the faint rustle of leaves create a soothing, multi-layered hum. You notice the children yawning, curling into mats beside elders, the small dogs settling into the sand with a contented sigh, and the adults easing into quiet smiles. It's a gentle conclusion, labor, play, learning, and ritual folded into a single, rhythmic heartbeat. Your own breathing slows, matching the cadence around you, and a calm washes over you as night drapes itself across the village. In this final moment, remember the warmth of sun on your shoulders, the smooth glide of canoes, the whispering of palms, and the laughter threaded through labor. Let the scent of salt, taro, and smoke linger softly, carrying you gently toward rest. Imagine the tide pulling softly at the sand, the stars reflected in lagoon waters, and the collective heartbeat of a village breathing in synchrony with the ocean. You have walked the paths, felt the wood, shared the songs, and observed the rhythm of life that moves as slowly, patiently, and kindly as the waves themselves. Now, the village grows quiet. The night hums softly. Fire embers glow faintly. Children and adults alike drift into sleep. You lie back, inhaling the cool, salty night air, letting the gentle cadence of water, wind, and human life lull you. Here, in the heart of Polynesian calm, each breath is a wave, each exhale a gentle surrender. You are cradled by the village, by the lagoon, by centuries of gentle tradition. Let your mind float, unhurried, peaceful, as the final twilight dims and the world whispers you towards sleep.